Hi, welcome to another episode of the Rowntree Gardens podcast. My name is Celeste Gonzalez, and I will be interviewing Mr. Joe today. I met Joe 2 years ago when I started working at Rowntree Gardens, and the moment I saw him and I had an actual interaction with him, I just thought, can he be my grandpa? Because he is one of the most lovely and kind human beings in this planet. And he truly shows that love, not only with the staff, but mainly with his wife. So I decided that I wanted to get to know a little bit more about him. And I am glad that I'm getting to do it with this interview. So here we go. Hello, Joe. Thank you for accepting to be on our Rowntree Gardens podcast. How are you doing today?
I am very fine, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be in on your podcast.
I love this. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So let's just get started. I want to know, I know we've met for almost 2 years already, because that's how long I've been working here.
I am married, but we met through my wife, right?
Oh, okay. Yes. Let's make it clear. Okay. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Where were you born?
I was a Lancaster County, Pennsylvania Dutchman. I was born in Amish country in Columbia, Pennsylvania in 1931. And for 19 years, I lived there. And then I decided that, hey, I'd like to see the world. And, I'm always impressed with those sailors as they walk by in town, the veterans and so forth. And so I decided, okay, they want me in the Army. They're going to force me to go in the Army, or I can elect to go in the Navy. So I elected to go in the Navy. And believe it or not, they were terrible to me. They decided that they swore me in Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
Put me on an airplane, flew me from Baltimore to Washington, D.C. Now, that's a real long period of time.
How many?
Well, it's like 35 minutes if it's that.
So it's not that much.
So then they decided, hey, we want him in San Diego, California to go through training in February.
Okay.
Now, the people right before me, they were all going to Great Lakes where it was snowy and everything. But there were 12 of us that were elected to go to San Diego. And then when I got here at San Diego, I went through my training. And would you believe, hey, Joe, we want you to stay. So they kept me on the training center for about 2 years.
Was there a specific reason why San Diego? They just chose randomly?
That's just one of the training centers. The training centers at that time were basically Great Lakes, Illinois, or San Diego.
Okay.
And so I was very fortunate to go on the ship's company down there for almost 2 years. And they said, I enjoyed California. I just fell in love with it immediately. But anyhow, they said, well, Joe, it's time for you to go to sea. What would you like to go to sea on? I said, I'd like an aircraft carrier. So sitting right across the bay in San Diego is a carrier, or carriers, I should say.
Yeah.
And you know what they did? They put me on an airplane and they sent me to Norfolk, Virginia to catch a troop transport to go to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to pick up a aircraft carrier.
So you were basically all over the place.
All over the place. And so then we were too big to go through the Panama Canal, and they wanted us in Korea, so we got the very fortunate opportunity to sail the Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean Sea, the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, cross the equator, get initiated going across the equator, but Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, all those. And then we come back the same way, went in for a yard overhaul, and went back to the Mediterranean, and I got discharged. I was put on a destroyer to come back to be discharged in Newport, Rhode Island. So I got to see what I wanted to see in the Navy.
You were basically 19 years and you're like, okay, let me be free. And you were free.
I was free.
The Navy
Yes,
gave you
yes.
that freedom.
Oh, yes. Yes.
That is amazing. How long were you in the Navy for?
4 years.
4 years?
But I
Okay.
got to see an awful lot in those 4 years.
Out of all those places that you just mentioned, which one was your favorite?
To be honest with you, one of the things that impressed me was the Mediterranean. And you know, surprisingly, California is much like the Mediterranean.
Really?
Because, well, yes, our coastline, we drop immediately from the mountains into the sea.
Okay.
Where on the Atlantic side, you go for miles and you can smell the brackish water and so forth because it's just laying there in ponds and so forth. Whereas here, it's fresh, it's right off, and there's nothing that's building up.
Interesting.
But the thing that really blew me away was in France, in Nice, France. We were in there twice. But the beaches. The beaches aren't lined with sand in the Mediterranean. Okay. They're lined with pebbles.
Interesting.
And it does not deter them from going. They just throw their blanket on, and at that time they were introducing the bikini, so to speak, over there, and it wasn't yet fashionable here, but they would lay out there in their bikinis and so forth.
So you got to see some fashion too.
Well, yes, got to see some fashion. But no, I enjoyed I got to see Monte Carlo.
Nice.
And I did not get into the casino, but I did get to see the castle and so forth, and get up to a perfumery there. And I still have thoughts of that trip that we took up through the mountains.
Nice.
And so,
Very nice.
No, I would say that was the most memorable for me. It was very interesting in Japan and so forth. Their way of living is totally different. One of the things that impressed me over there was because of the shortage of space, they use every square inch, they'll make a garden and so forth, and it's not very large for what we would have here, but they're kept beautiful. But the other thing is to save space, they do not have doors that swing. Their doors slide. That's for inside and outside, and that way they save space.
That's something we probably need here.
That's true.
That would
yes,
be.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the way we're building closer and closer together.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I know some of this information because I have actually interviewed before, because you recently participated in an ageless aviation flight.
Yes.
And how was that experience?
That was fantastic because that was something I always wanted to do. I had wanted to be launched from an aircraft carrier. I did not get launched, but I did get to take a helicopter ride from one carrier to another. Yes. And in going from one to the other, what was so fascinating and so forth, and it's probably very simple, but it was for the helicopter to be flying over this destroyer, and I'm looking down the smokestack on the destroyer as we're cruising along. But it's quite a thrill.
That's good. Yeah, I know when you participated, you had a great time.
Oh, yes.
You didn't really know what was going. You just knew you were getting on a plane. Yeah. But I know you had a lot of fun and you enjoyed it.
Oh, yes. I looked forward to it. It was funny when we're going down the runway getting ready for takeoff, and we're going down there zigzagging and so forth, and the pilot comes on and he says, "Joe," he says, "I'm not really drunk." He says, "I just have to do this because that's the only way I can see in front of me."
Hey, pilots have their way.
Oh, yes, yes.
They do. Well, I'm going to switch the subject a little bit because I would like to talk about your wife. How did you meet your wife, Joe Wallach?
Oh, I met my wife in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and believe it or not, we lived in the same town in Lancaster County, and we were only at least no more than a mile apart. Okay. I had seen her, but I wasn't aware of what her name was, and then I went in service and so forth, and when I come back, and there were some, I was in what they called the yard office, and so one day Millie's coming down, and she's talking to some of the girls, and they're talking about the World Series for that year. And so good old Joe, very quiet Joe, he has to stick his nose in, and Millie's talking about the Yankees and so forth. So I started ribbing her about the Dodgers. And before you know it, one thing led to another, and I asked her out for a date. And that was 64 years ago, and the rest is history. We were married 60 years on September 15th of this year. So they were very fruitful, and I am so thankful for her. She is a blessing. She has kept me anchored, because I am generally quick to charge. And she says, "Whoa, Joe, let's talk about it." And when we talk about it, it generally is, "Yes, you're right, Millie."
So what has been a memory, like one of your favorite memories as a married man? Something that you can say, wow, this is what made me love Millie so much.
Well, to be honest with you, she was just a very sweet person. She was humble, very, very talented relative to, she made her own clothing. She made her own bras, her bathing suits, you name it, and hats. She had hats galore. In fact, just about 10 years ago, we finally got some of the hats out and threw them away. They were that old. But no, she was very talented. Also, she did painting. She was interested in oils.
Interesting.
Let me see. Also, she worked with ceramics. She did quite a bit in ceramics. And so, yes, no, that's really what has amazed me about her. And she turned out to be a very good cook.
Good. What was your favorite food that you were like, Millie, can you just make me this to be?
I think both of our favorite foods was Italian, but to be honest with you, we ran pretty much the full course. We were even so bold as to try beef Wellington, and I don't know if you know what beef Wellington consists of and how it's made and so forth.
I do not.
It's quite a chore. But no, we loved that. But we're Chinese. We love Chinese and so forth. So we weren't really specifically cut in. And that is somewhat amazing, since coming from the plain type of food that you grew up at in Pennsylvania.
So, as you mentioned, you met Millie in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
What made you guys move to Southern California?
Well, as I said in the beginning, I fell in love with California. I always said I wanted to live in California, and that was 1952 that I left California, and it took me 20 years to get back here. And I worked for Armstrong Cork Company in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, as Millie did. They sold their packaging materials division, which consisted of glass containers, of which I was associated with. They sold the glass container division to a small company out here called Kerr, noted primarily for their home canning jars.
Okay.
And in 1972, the one vice president said, "Joe, we'd like you to come to California. Come on out for a week and see what you think." And so I brought Millie out, and Millie fell in love with it immediately. And so we moved out in June of 1972. We moved in an apartment in Park La Brea, right near Farmers Market in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And we stayed there for 10 years to the day, and we never lived in an apartment in our lives, because we lived in a brand new home in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, right when we were married.
Yes.
We were fortunate to have moved into a home. And then from there, we moved to Redondo Beach, and we stayed in Redondo Beach for 34 years. And then we decided that, hey, it's time, the house is too big and so forth, and we got to find some place to live. And so we looked, and we found Rowntree Gardens, and I must say I am in love with it, madly in love with it, because it is the best decision I think we've ever made. They spoil me so much. There's so much love and warmth around here that is unbelievable.
I am glad. So, when you were first looking for a different home, how did you know Rowntree Gardens would be your home?
When we pulled into the parking lot out here, we got out of the car, and there was a workman that had walked by. He had a smile on his face and said hello. And so as we walked down the walkway to go to the main office to see Denise, the residents that are sitting there on benches, and they smiled and said hello to us and so forth. And we went in, naturally Denise with her usual charm and so forth. And, just one thing after another. And just the warmth, like I said, the warmth and the love that exudes from here is unbelievable.
Well, we're glad. We're glad that we were able to be that home that you were looking for.
I honestly feel that a lot of people do not believe that it is that possible to have something that warm. But no, I had a friend, we've been friends for 40 years, and he had a business. He worked with me at Kerr, and then on his 25th year anniversary, he walked in and he said, "I'm sorry," he says, "I'm leaving the company in 2 weeks." And now he was just a salesman. He was a very good salesman, but he went and he and his wife bought a business of pressure gauges.
Interesting.
And so they started out from scratch,
From zero.
doing it, just the two of them, and they built it into a multi-million-dollar business.
Nice.
And now they're living in North Carolina on one of the world-famous golf courses.
Nice.
And they were out here, and they visited Rowntree, and as we're going through, they said, "That's your library?" They said, "Well, Linda's mother lives in a retirement community such as this, but they don't even have a library."
Wow.
And they were just totally blown away by everything that they saw.
Well, we're glad. We're glad that we are that home for you. I know that here at Rowntree, music follows you everywhere because you always carry that speaker of yours playing from Frank Sinatra to Ariana Grande.
Well,
What makes you love music so much?
I just love music because it makes me feel good. Now, what I've tried to do, introduce the French. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Pink Martini.
I have not.
Well, she's basically a jazz singer for nightclubs and so forth, but a beautiful voice, but a great beat and this. But no, I've taken a liking to all kinds of music, even classical. Yeah. I will sit at night and I will play classical music, and that may surprise some people for the other type of music that I play.
You do play every type of music.
But, well, I enjoy it.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
It's always good to hear because it's easy to recognize where you're at. I just hear music and I'm like, oh, there goes Joe Wallach.
I know.
Let me go
if
say
I'm riding
hi.
up on the elevator when I get off, they say, "Hi, Joe. We knew you were coming."
It's your little sign. We know that you're
Yes.
coming.
No. It is very, to me, it's very soothing and comforting, and it affords a release, I think,
Yes.
away from the
From stress.
stress. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Joe, is there any advice that you would give to younger generations something that you may grew up with thinking, or some inspiration that you would like to tell younger generations?
Well, the only thing I can say is the government is not free, and if you think you're going to be getting things free from the government, you're paying for it either in advance or afterwards. The best thing to do is work hard, save as much as you can, and trust that you will have enough to carry you through for the rest of your life. Now, Millie and I, we were very successful in building little savings for us to help us carry us through, but there's so many people today that they're not concerned at all that it has to be, I want it now. Well, there were a lot of things that we had wanted now, but we put it off and later. And even if we didn't get what we were looking for at the moment, that was fine because we weren't supposed to have it.
Yes.
But all I can say is that get in there and work as hard as you can with a business or whatever it is that you want to do. And that's one of the things I'll say for here. I'm sure that there's 99% or more of the people that are here that are working, and this is exactly what they want to do because, as I said, it's the love that they show and the warmth that they give you. It's got to be. So I trust that they can likewise do that in whatever profession that they would choose to go on.
Yes. Well, Joe, that's all my questions that I have for you. I really appreciate you being here, giving me your time, letting me know more about you, and letting others know more about you. And I am just so grateful that I met you 2 years ago, and here we are.
But thank you for asking me to participate, and it's been a joy.